Hey there, I see you. Welcome aboard. It is another episode of AthleticsCast. I'm Wayne Coy. I'm your host for the show here on the Believe Podcast Network, available wherever you can find a podcast, and of course on YouTube as well. Nice to have you here today. Whew, a lot of work going into today's episode because we have a narrative, and anytime you have a narrative, you want to make sure that you get your I's dotted and your T's crossed. So I do believe we're okay. I want to double check a couple of things. First of all, I did say my name was Wayne Coy, but I don't think you can see that. So let's fix that before we go any further, okay? Somewhere in here is the little thing that I click and it puts my name up on the screen. Where is it? It's gone. No, it's not. It's right there. Okay, cool. Next thing is, no, I'm not Drew Brees, but yes, I also have a thing on my face. It's this deal right here. See it? I had something removed, because you got to do that when you get to be a certain age. You got to start being careful with your skin. So I went in, I had the work done, and it's fast. They just go, they freeze it, but it always leaves like a scab. It has to heal. The worst part is where it's at. You got to shave, right? What are you supposed to do? Can't shave over that. So I think eventually there's going to be like a beard growing in one spot of my cheek, maybe. Hopefully it doesn't last too long. Anyway. Now that you're going to be watching that like the mole and Austin Powers, welcome aboard. Another episode, like I said, and oh boy, lots to talk about with the A's. But today, it's kind of a little different journey because today is, have you ever heard of a Dear John letter? Have you ever heard of that? That's basically a breakup letter, right? Dear John. Well, believe it or not, today I'm creating and then presenting my Dear John letter. So when I say presenting, that means I'm going to probably be looking down to read this thing more than I normally would because I don't want to ad lib. I want to stick to the facts, Jack. The other things I have to tell you before we get started. One is this is a carbonated beverage, which might make me burp. Get that out of the way. The second thing is I have had White Castle sliders today, so those are so good going down. Sometimes kind of interesting coming back up. Okay, I know that's a little gross, but anyway, I digress. Let's get into it. It is a Dear John episode of AthleticsCast. Dear John. Dear Casey. Dear John, I am writing to you today to let you know that I have come to a decision, John, and the decision is, as hard as it is for me to say, we're just not compatible. In fact, I'm afraid we're at the end of the road here, John. And I know that we're the same age, you and I. And we both are, let's say, follically challenged, right? Except you're balder than I am, but whatever. Anyway, John, even though a map of the Bay Area might say that we do indeed come from the same place, we really don't at all. And I believe that that has deeply affected our chances, John, of saving our relationship. So let me see if I can kind of break it down and then make you understand exactly where I'm coming from and more importantly, what really needs to happen here. Okay? John Fisher, born July 1st, 1961, San Francisco. That's where he grew up. Parents, Don Fisher and Doris Feigenbaum Fisher, made famous recently with the Doris Come Get Your Kid signs. They founded The Gap in 1969. In fact, it was Mama Doris who came up with the name. Generation Gap. She said, let's call it The Gap. They said, oh, the Generation Gap. And she said, no, just The Gap. Worked out pretty well for them. I came into the world just shy of 3 months after John did. I think he's born in July. I'm born in September. Same year, though. September 23rd. Happy birthday to me on the 23rd. I was born in Long Beach, California. My mom's Margaret Sharon Coy, or where she was at the time, and her Coast Guard serving husband was John Willard Coy from Louisville, Kentucky. Now, John signed the birth certificate and gave me his last name, which I've had my entire life, even though he knew that he was not my biological father. He knew that. See, he was away 9 months earlier. He was in Alaska on a ship. My mom was staying in Louisville while he was away. Anyway, stuff happens. They stayed legally married for a little while longer after that, okay? But eventually they got divorced, which left mom to raise me and my sister April. And then within a few years, 2 additional siblings, my brother Richard and my baby sister Bonnie. So 4 of us. Every single one of us has a different bio dad. Can you believe that? We all have the same alcoholic mother. John, well, he's the youngest of 3 boys, apparently. Very stubborn growing up. None of those kids even more stubborn than John was, though. In fact, his nickname was Harpo. And why did he get the nickname? Well, he got it because he was constantly harping at his parents. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And according to his mom, her quote now was, "You could not tell him no." Telling him no was a waste of time, she said, because he would figure out a way to get what he wanted. Fisher, lifelong Giants fan. His grandparents were too. So he kind of comes by it naturally. Grandpa was a big Giants fan, took him to Candlestick to see a bunch of games when he was a kid. So while John Fisher was being treated to Willie Mays and Willie McCovey and Juan Marichal and all the candy and ice cream that Grandpa could buy, I was on the other side of the bay, East Oakland. From 1969 to 1972, we lived in a couple of places. We lived in an apartment building on 74th Avenue, right off MacArthur, just around the corner from the Eastmont Mall, if you know where that is. Anyway, we also spent a whole bunch of time living in various motels. Not hotels with an H, motels with an M. Difference, okay? They stand for, I think it stands for mobile hotel. Is that what it stands for? Anyway, motels were different. We lived in the Mission Motel. We lived in the Bel Air Motel. We lived in the Empire Motel, pretty much all up and down MacArthur Boulevard. The one thing these places had in common besides being motels is that they were all what they call pay by the week, okay? So we would stay there until mom didn't have the money to pay the rent, and then it was time to check out, usually in the middle of the night when nobody was around, and then go check in to the next place somewhere along the boulevard. That was kind of our existence. Anyway, we would call that place, wherever it was, home for a little while. It was just wash and repeat, really. Did that for a couple of years. Spent some time in a duplex over at 82nd and MacArthur, right there, or 82nd and Bancroft, rather, right by St. Benedict's School. In fact, played baseball there on the asphalt at St. Benedict's. I tell my kids that. It's like, yeah, we played actual hardball on the hard asphalt. You know, AstroTurf's got nothing on that, right? They just can't believe it, but it's true, we did. Anyway, so I went to school there, went to Luther Burbank, I went to E. Morris Cox, I went to Webster Elementary in Oakland. Lots of upheaval, no doubt about it. The one constant, though, the one thing that you could count on, no matter which motel we were in, no matter which school I was going to, it didn't matter. The one thing that was always a given is that I would be hopping on that number 57 bus, the AC Transit bus, that would drop you off right at the top of the overpass on Hegenberger Road, literally just on the other side of the fence from the Oakland Coliseum. So I'd get off the bus, climb underneath that fence, because that's what you did, and then I would hightail it towards the ice plants that were over there and the Oakland Coliseum. Sometimes I go with friends, but a lot of the times I just go by myself. It was my place to escape, whether it was daytime or nighttime. It didn't matter how bad things were at home. No, because I had my Oakland A's. See? Starting in 1969, in fact, if you find a Sports Illustrated article all about Reggie Jackson, because he had a heck of a year in 69, he challenged for a while there Babe Ruth and Roger Maris's home run record. But if you get that Sports Illustrated, you'll see Reggie sitting up in the top of the dugout, and then a bunch of kids kind of hanging around trying to get him to sign an autograph. Well, I'm one of those kids. See if you can find me. Find that picture and see if you can find me. It's like, where's Waldo? Okay. Anyway, it was cool to be an A's fan. 1971, it was not Reggie's turn. It was Vida Blue's turn. He came on like, I just can't even describe what it was like. Vida Blue took the nation, the world by storm. He was on the cover of Newsweek and Time, ended up being the Cy Young Award winner and the MVP that year, 1971. In fact, led the A's to their first ever American League Division championship in the Western Division. They then played the Baltimore Orioles in the playoffs and got a taste of what it's like to play postseason baseball. They didn't win. They didn't go to the World Series, but they were primed and ready so that when 1972 rolled around, ultimately the A's did, in fact, give the Bay Area their first ever World Championship. They beat the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds were favored, but the A's took care of business. And meanwhile, Mama, she just kept on drinking. And every couple of months, we would meet a new man who, in the words of my mom, would be maybe your dad someday. Well, it never happened. None of them ever took that part of the gig very seriously. But I'd see them, like late at night. Typically, they'd come home and Mom would put on her Tammy Wynette records and her lipstick and off to the races. Anyway, the A's were busy beating the Tigers in the playoffs, and Mama sat us down, me and Richard, and Bonnie, not April. She wasn't around. And my mom said to us, and I'll never forget this, she said, we need to get you out of East Oakland. It's not safe here. I want you to have an experience like I had. So you're going to get to taste the small town life and what it's like to live kind of out in the country. We're going to move to Iowa. Well, that's where my mom's from. She's from Keokuk, Iowa. Guess where we moved to? That's right. We jumped onto the Greyhound bus. We didn't jump. I sort of had to be dragged on because, look, my baseball team was in the playoffs. I felt like this was going to be our year, and she was yanking me away from that to take me to this little dinky town sitting right there on the banks of the Mississippi River. But that's where we went. And we got there. It took a minute to assimilate. I will tell you the one cool thing was had an opportunity to watch my team play in the World Series on TV during class. Okay? Because these were daytime World Series games, and I won't forget it ever. Blue Moon Odom pitching for the A's in the World Series against the Reds, and we got to watch it right there in the class. Now, I told you my big sister, April, wasn't there, and the reason for that was she was very much in love, very much going steady with, and then ultimately engaged to, and then married the same guy she's married to all these many, many years later, and that would be my brother-in-law, Ted. So the two of them had a thing going on, and they decided, April did, look, I'm not going to Iowa. I am a senior in high school. I'm staying put. So she did. Actually, I think she might have only been a junior, but she was emancipated legally and able to stay there. She moved in with one of her friends, and I went on to Iowa as well as my younger siblings. Thankfully, that small town experiment, it didn't last too long, but it did get me through 72 and 73, where the A's were in the World Series again. But finally, like I said, we moved back to Oakland. In fact, we moved into our old apartment on 74th Ave just in time for the A's to make their postseason run for the third year in a row. And for the third year in a row, they were in the World Series. It was the Reds in 72, and then the Mets in 73, and now, first ever, California World Series. They called it the Freeway Series, the A's against the Dodgers in October of 1974. Well, listen, I'd missed the first two. I was in Iowa. There was no way in heck I was going to be denied the opportunity to go see my team play in the World Series. Now, I didn't have any tickets, but I had money and I had friends. I didn't have a lot of money. I had, $30 or so. But I had friends, Sergio and my other friend, Curtis. All of us went to Frick Junior High, and we put our heads together and we said, look, we're going to go to the World Series together. So we did. We rode the 57 bus, of course, to the Coliseum. Got off there on Hegenberger, Game 4, October 16th, 1974. No tickets, but we did have cash. About a half an hour later, we had no cash, but we did have tickets. So into the game we went. And what a game. It was a win for the A's. Kenny Holtzman, starting pitcher, hits a home run in the game. I will never forget that. So very exciting. A's win 5-2. They are one game away from putting the Dodgers away. Well, we didn't have tickets for that game. and we didn't know what we were going to do. We had talked about it, though, before we left, got out of school, talked about it as we walked home all the way from Frick, which is like 64th, to 73rd, where I was, 75th, where Curtis was, and 73rd? Yeah, 73rd up above MacArthur is where Serge lived. So we all decided, yeah, we're going to go. And not only that, we got a plan because we've only got enough money to get into the game tonight. But if there's any kind of way, if the A's win, that we could stay and watch them win the World Series, we got to figure out a way to do that. So we came up with a plan. All of us told our parents, or in this case, for all three of us, our parent, no dads around. These were all single mom families. Mom, guess what? I got this project that I'm doing at school, and it is due tomorrow, and I really got to work on it. It's not done. The only way we're going to get it done is if I spend the night tonight at insert kid's name here. See? Devious plan, right? Well, to be able to get it to work after the A's won that game that night, we needed a little help, and we knew right where to get it. His name was George Costa, and he's about 6, 7 years older than us, but he knew all the kids in the hood. He was one of the head ushers there at the Coliseum. And we went up to George, and we basically begged him. We pleaded with him. We tried everything. We said, George, please let us stay inside the stadium tonight. We promise we won't do anything wrong. We just want to see the game tomorrow, and we don't have tickets. Figuring he would just get it on that level and say, yeah, sure, go ahead. Well, that didn't happen. In fact, he said, not no, but hell no. I'm not going to lose my job over you guys. All right? And that was that. Or at least he thought it was. You see, John Fisher was not the only one who knew how to harp, because I certainly did. So I thought of this, and it worked. I went up to George, and I said, after I begged him over and over again, and he kept saying no, I said, George, what if on opening day next year we come to the game and each of us gives you $20? Well, $60 was a lot of money in 1974. So yeah, it worked. George let us stay with a caveat. He said, I want you to go to the third deck. I want you to go to the very top row of the third deck. I want you down, as far down as you can get, on the cement. I don't want to see your heads, any of you. And if I do, before they bring out the cage for batting practice tomorrow, you're going to get kicked out of here. And not only that, you're going to be banned from the stadium forever. Oof. That was definitely an edict. But we followed what George said. We did. And even though it was a warm day, it was like 83 that day. It was beautiful. It was chilly. I mean, it's Oakland. You're not far from the water. As soon as the sun goes down, it gets cold. Ask anybody who's ever been there, they'll tell you, right? So down we went. We used our jackets basically as blankets and pillows. And sure enough, here comes the cage. Late afternoon the next day. It was like, I don't know, 2 o'clock, somewhere in there. I think the game started at 5:30. So yeah, it was like 1:32. Anyway, here comes the cage. So we pop up. We're like, look, nobody's watching. We said we'd stay here till the cage got here. It did. Boom. Off and running. We'd find seats. You could always find seats at the Coliseum. So it was not going to be a big deal, right? We froze our asses off, but it was well worth it because we were going to be, hopefully, able to see our team win its third consecutive World Series. Lots of cool things happened that day. I got a ball handed to me by Steve Garvey, same guy that's running for office now. And I know he played for the Dodgers, but, you know, he was Steve Garvey. He was very good. And he handed me the baseball, which was awesome. Frank Sinchek, equipment manager for the A's, gave me a broken bat. So here I am. I got a broken bat. I got a ball. We have hot dogs. And you're probably wondering, how did you get hot dogs? You didn't have any money. Well, there was a family that was sitting pretty close to the dugout, okay, A's side. They had this big box full of hot dogs. There must have been 20 of them. Well, when they weren't looking, because they were paying attention to whoever happened to be walking by, oh, it's Joe Rudy, right? Snatch, snatch. A couple hot dogs for me, a couple hot dogs for Serge, and a couple hot dogs for Curtis. So we got dinner, World Series game. What else could you ask for? Well, there was one other thing. And I was sworn at the time to never, ever, ever tell anybody. Ever. So, of course, I'm going to tell you. Sergio peed his pants. Okay? That night, remember, we weren't allowed to move. So we're laying there freezing our butts off, and Serge had to go. So he did. And he told us both at the time, if you ever say anything about this to anybody ever, you're dead. First of all, I don't even know if he's still around. Secondly, I doubt he's listening or watching the podcast. So I feel like I'm in the clear here. Sergio, hopefully the statute of limitations is on my side as well. I hate to have given that up, but I had to do that. Okay? Hope you didn't hear it. Well, in 1975, just like his two older brothers, John Fisher attended private school. It was called Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire. His parents sent him there. He was just 14. And I guess the night before he started his classes, he was so homesick that he checked himself into what they call the infirmary, where the nurse's office is. Said his stomach hurt really bad. And then he said, and quoting from John here, our mom told our brother Bill to visit me. So Bill comes up from Princeton. We go to lunch, and he says, listen, mom's worried about you. She's afraid you're not going to eat. Don't be so homesick, and it'll be fine when you got some work to do. So Fisher got through it. He stayed there, enrolled all the way through until his graduation at the age of 18 in 1979. Well, in early 1975, same year that Fisher was starting his private school there back east, my two younger siblings and I were living with my mom in yet another East Oakland motel. And it was like the second or third day of being there, and she came home at 7 o'clock in the morning. Obviously feeling no pain, right? She'd been out all night having fun. And before she passed out, she instructed us to go register for school. I need you kids to go register for school. First of all, I didn't even know which school I was supposed to be going to. I wasn't sure. Secondly, I said to her, how are we supposed to do this without you? She said, go figure it out. Okay. So we leave. It's me, it's Bonnie, and it's Richard. And I said to my brother and my sister, that's it. I can't take this anymore. I'm calling April. That's my older sister. So we go to the payphone. Didn't have a cell phone back then. Go to the payphone, put the dime in, make the phone call. Call my sister, who's just getting ready to leave for work. She worked at Smith's clothing store there at 12th and Broadway, downtown Oakland. And we said, April, this is ridiculous. She's drunk again, and we can't take it. And she wants us to go register for school, and we don't even know which school we're supposed to get, on and on and on. Finally, my sister was like, look, just get on the bus, figure out which bus, and get here. I got to go to work. So does Ted, but we'll figure it out. So the neighbor, whose name I think was Janice, raised her hand and said, I'll take him in while you guys are gone, and we'll work it out later. So we go to her house, and we're hanging out there, and sure enough, it's my mom and her psycho-alcoholic boyfriend, whose name I don't even want to mention. I did not like this man. Evil guy. Anyway, they show up. We're looking for the kids. Are they here? And she did a great job. She said, no, they're not. Even though in the back bedroom, in the closet, yes, we were. But she did a good job of kind of covering for us. So we hid out. A few days later, we were out of that bedroom, and after having spent a day or so at my sister's place, we ended up at juvenile hall. And the reason we were is because we were awaiting placement into the foster system. And the reason for that is my mother had been deemed unfit to be able to take care of us anymore. So that was kind of a mind blow. And I got to be honest with you, I wasn't so sure how things were going to work out, and I was scared. The other thing is, I had already had a taste of what it was like to go to school in San Leandro, and I really liked it. But they sent us out to Union City and a family out there that I just immediately had a bad vibe from. So I started working it, and I got a hold of my friend Danny Brown, and I said, Dan, your mom's a foster mom, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, you got to do me a favor, buddy. You got to figure out a way for me to be able to live with you. He was like, what? And I said, yeah, please. Because otherwise I got to go to Union City and live with these people who I don't think have ever had kids before. And I could just tell already they're kind of creepy. So I don't want to go there. He said, well, what about your sister and your brother? I said, they're probably going to have to go there. But I want to stay in San Leandro. Can you help me? So long story longer, he got with his mom, the late Jan Brown, and his sister Penny, and they were all very kind, and they brought me in and were able to let me stay there and keep going to the same school, which was John Muir Junior High in San Leandro. Well, then Aunt Ruth and Uncle Wayne, who again weren't really my aunt and uncle, but had known my mom and actually John Coy since we were just really little, they were moving from Oakland to San Leandro. And so she said to me, how would you like to live with us? And I said, it'd be great, because frankly, Dan and I were getting on each other's nerves quite a bit at that point, right? Anyway, Aunt Ruth and Uncle Wayne got the foster parents license, and they did eventually move to San Leandro. But at the beginning, I stayed with them in Oakland, rode my bike into John Muir, and then they moved out on Doolittle Drive in San Leandro. So I was able to go to the same school consecutively, well, not same school, but same schools, John Muir Junior High, and then Pacific High, which is 880 in Marina, or for you youngsters, it's Nordstrom's Rack. Okay, yeah, that's you know where the football field is that San Leandro High plays on. Well, that was our football field. It was Pacific High School. I think it closed a few years after I was gone, 1983, I think, 83 or 84. Anyway, that's where I went to high school. And before that, all of us kids went to John Muir Junior High. So 4 years in a row, 75, 76, 77, 78, I got to hang out with the same kids, which was kind of normal. And yeah, my brother and my sister did stay with the weird people in Union City, but only for a little while, because even they were able to finally, say to the social worker, look, these people are weird. We want to stay someplace else. So thankfully, they got placed with the Meadows family out in Dublin, who were famous foster parents for having so many kids over the years, and they were fantastic. So all's well that ends well. Everything worked out good. I finished high school my junior year, actually got my diploma by earning the summer school credits. I did not want to come back and be a senior, as crazy as that is, because I was like, all involved in theater and journalism, and, you'd think you'd want to hang out, right? Senior year is supposed to be your fun year. Well, I had already gotten my very first full-time job. I was a DJ in a disco, a place where people used to dance. That was out in Fremont at the New Age. So I was working out there. I didn't want any part of school. I was done with it. Got my credits taken care of, summer school, got my diploma. Didn't get to walk with the class, which was weird, but whatever. So off I go to Fremont, and, I'm trying to be an adult, but I'm only 17. Anyway, finished high school. That was all good. It's now, 1979, and, I'm out of school for a year, living on my own. My apartment is so close, I literally could play the long version of Marvin Gaye's Got to Give It Up, Robin Thicke. You know what song I'm talking about? Yeah. I could literally play that, go home, get something to eat or whatever, and get back before it was over. That's how close I lived. Anyway, in New Jersey, while I was doing all of that, again, following his brother's lead, John Fisher moved on to a private Ivy League institution you may have heard of, a little place called Princeton University. I think you're supposed to say it like this, though. Princeton. Anyway, he lettered in squash, which is a game that most of us have never played, but he did. And he earned a bachelor's degree, graduated in 1983. Congratulations, John. There is a direct correlation, there actually is, between the affluent, which is a fancy word for rich people, and the elite schools. You may have already guessed that, but it's actually been all worked out. A study finds that 38 different colleges like Tufts University and Penn University and Dartmouth and Yale, and yes, Princeton have more students from the top 1% of the income scale than from the entire bottom 60%. In fact, about 4 in 10 students from the top 1% attend an Ivy League or elite university, which is about the same share of students from the bottom 20% who attend a typical 2 or 4 year college. Well, then you throw in the legacy program for a student like John Fisher, who is now the third Fisher son, whose dad and mom own the Gap, who are going to go to the same schools. So anyway, you can guess what happened there. After attending San Francisco State for like about a week, I think it was 2 weeks, I opted out because it was a 4-year school. It was going to take me 4 years to get a degree and then probably a job, because they had a good reputation in the broadcasting world of taking their graduates and getting them gigs. But I wanted, just like high school, I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to move. I wanted to do my thing. I wanted to be a DJ on the radio. So I go to Ron Bailey Institute of Broadcasting, and I earn what is basically what they call their bachelor degree equivalent degree in broadcasting. They teach you how to pass the first class test, which I didn't do, but didn't matter. I was able to handpick my very first job with a horrible audition tape. Found out later the reason why I got the gig is because I was willing to work cheap, like real cheap, $700 a month, and all the records I could steal. That was my deal, and I was happy to have it, right? I was on the radio. And also I had cousins and nieces and nephews and 2 aunts that lived in this same town, Keokuk, Iowa, where my mom was from. Remember them from earlier in the story? Yeah. So it came in handy, at least once a week. Talking about a home-cooked meal now. And for a guy just starting out in radio, you'd take it, right? So by 1984, I was a 3-year radio vet. I was now married, and I was living back in the Bay Area. Well, after returning to California from Princeton, John Fisher was a fundraiser for the Ronald Reagan, George Bush campaign, 1984. And then after that, it was on to Stanford, just like his brothers, where he got a master's degree in business administration, MBA, just like his brothers. And then once he had that MBA, well, then he went to work with a real estate company that failed miserably, unlike his brothers. And I guess they tried to talk him into coming into the family business. They wanted him to, be involved with the Gap. And he pushed back. So we actually do have that in common, because I was not settling for high school anymore. I did not want to go to the 4-year school. So I kind of put my foot down. Well, John did the same thing. He said, look, I'm not interested. I want to build things. It kind of reminds me maybe a little bit of the Jimmy Stewart thing from It's a Wonderful Life. Remember, he wanted to go travel the world. Well, John Fisher, the recent graduate from Princeton, said that he wanted to be an entrepreneur. He said, I want to build businesses or build shopping centers or whatever it might be. There's good old Harpo asking for his way, and he got it. So the pushback led to him instead being named the president of Pisces Incorporated. Just happened to be the family's investment management company, but whatever, it wasn't the Gap, right? I mean, he was still working for mom and dad very much, but he didn't have to go fold jeans. So there you go. And then kind of like the WKRP in Cincinnati theme song, I spent the 80s packing and unpacking up and down the dial. That's what I did. I had a lot of jobs because that's what radio was like back then. You would take a gig, have it with your eye always on maybe the bigger market or the cooler format or whatever, or the station will get sold and you'd be out of work and you need to go find another job. Lots of reasons for the mobility, and there was plenty of it, which I apologize to my children for having put them through that, because unlike any other business, except maybe, I don't know, the armed forces, you move a lot in radio. In fact, at one point, I had furniture that had like 5 different moving companies stickers on it. That's how much we moved. So yeah, a little bit of that. Anyway, from that first Iowa gig, I then went to Texas and California, and then back to Iowa for round 2, and then the divorce. And then me and the 2 boys, the Coy boys, the 3 of us, we moved up to Minnesota, where I met another girl and fell in love and got married again. So I was a single dad for a minute. In fact, I think I was single when I busted my TV. I threw my shoe at the screen because this guy named Kirk Gibson, oh, you know. Anyway, as soon as that home run got hit, I was so pissed. I threw my shoe and cracked the screen of my television. Anyway, that was the 1988 World Series. And then it was on to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I worked at WIXX. I was doing the afternoon show, and I was a program director there. And I had just gotten off my show at 7:04 p.m., thereabouts, within a few seconds. And our news director comes flying into the studio, and he's like, Wayne, panicked look on his face. He goes, you're from the Bay Area, right? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, you've got to come in here. So I go to the newsroom, and sure enough, there on the television is the play-by-play, but not of the World Series, of the Loma Prieta earthquake, right? And I was recording the game at home, I remember, because I finally watched the tape, and I'm thinking I'm going to at least, see what's going on. I didn't realize this, but the network went to a Roseanne episode for a little while till they could get back. Oh, it was horrible. As anybody that was in the Bay Area then could tell you, just not good. And what's weird is I was in that same hotel where they had an issue over right by the airport in San Francisco. Can't remember what town it's in, but it was a Hyatt hotel, but they had elevators that would go up on the outside of the building, I guess. And apparently there was an issue there, but that's the same hotel where we had our class reunion. Whoa. Kind of scary. But you know what? You take that in stride if you live in the Bay Area, you're kind of used to it. And, after the heartbreak of '88, as bad as it is, of course, I felt horrible for anybody that was affected by the earthquake, the fire or the quake itself, all that work that Dave Stewart did, in Oakland at the freeway there. I mean, all of that, of course, completely has your heart and your prayers and all of that. But I was also praying for the A's to beat those Giants, John Fisher's Giants, in the World Series. And they did. 4-game sweep. Thank you very much. World Series champs again. So we had the 3 in the 70s, and we got that one there in '89. And I mean, with that team, you got McGuire and Henderson and Canseco and Eckersley and Dave Stewart. I'm thinking, okay, we were there in '88. We were there in '89. We're going to probably be there again next year, which they were. But I'm thinking 5-6 years, they're unstoppable. They did go back in 1990. So just like the teams in the 70s, they were there 3 times. The only difference is 3 straight World Series appearances in the 70s, 3 straight trophies, right? Well, they only won 1 out of the 3 in '88 through 1990. 10 years after, great band, by the way, after I started in radio, it was like, more than 10 years, 1992, right? I'm now not only on the air, I'm a big shot top 40 radio program director, driving a company car. It was actually just a car with these magnetic stickers on the side that said B94.7. I'm up in Reading, and I'm programming a top 40 radio station. 3-hour drive, Coliseum. Me and the 2 Coy boys and the wife at the time make that drive. Why? Because the A's were in the playoffs, and if it hadn't been for Roberto Alomar and Eckersley choking it up again, I think we might have gone to the World Series again. Didn't happen. Toronto won their first World Series, and my eldest at the time was only 7 years old. Now remember, I became an A's fan when I was 8. Well, he was 7, and he was hook, line, and sinker, and he still is to this day about as devout an A's fan as you're ever going to meet. Remember that. 1992, San Francisco Giants owner Bob Lurie reached an agreement not to sell the Giants. But before that, he had reached an agreement to sell them, and they were off to Tampa Bay until a group of local Giant fan investors, including John Fisher, stepped up to keep the Giants from making that move to Tampa. So they didn't. They stayed. The community saved the team. MLB did the right thing. Remember that for later. But the decision did come after a big fight about the place they were playing, Candlestick Park. Just wasn't fit, they said. They need a new stadium, they said. All of that kind of ringing a bell, right? Anyway, last minute, I guess the way it went down, according to the book, I don't know if you knew this or not, but John Fisher's dad, Don, wrote an autobiography. It's hard to find. You can't really get it because it was only printed for friends and family. Remember I told you I was going to have to take a drink? We got there. Okay, hang on. And then I'm going to burp. Anyway, John Fisher, the Giants fan, hope you're taking notes. stepped up, but first he went to his dad and he said, Dad, I think we need to try to put a deal together to keep the Giants here. And then Don Fisher, Daddy Fisher, said, I'm not interested in it. If you're interested, well, you take care of it. I'm not going to pay any attention to it. Now, he didn't say I'm not going to pay for it, because he probably did. Betting man, I'm saying that it was his money, but whatever. John got his wish, right? Harpo, making things happen. That deal led to connections for John Fisher with a guy named Lou Wolf. Now, as you know, eventually, the two of them, after purchasing a couple of hotels, I think they had the Fairmont, didn't they? San Francisco. Anyway, invested in baseball. Not just baseball, Bay Area baseball. Except it was the wrong team. It was the team across the bay, but they'll get over that, right? About 90% of the ownership, John Fisher, the other 10 or so for Lou Wolf, and actually some limited partners as well. So they buy the team. They have this group, 2005. Bud Selig, Wolf's frat brother from college, chooses their bid to buy the A's, even though it was lower than the offers from a couple of groups. One of them headed up by Joe Lacob, who owns the Golden State Warriors, and another one led by Microsoft founder Bill Gates, and a certain outfielder by the name of Reggie that you might remember. Anyway, higher bids, yet they didn't get the team. It went to Lou Wolf and John Fisher. In 2007, I came back to the East Bay area after having been gone for about 10 years. I had lived in San Ramon and then moved away, did some more radio stuff. And anyway, I got a chance to come back, hired to host the morning show on 101.7 KKIQ and 92.1 KKDV. A couple of suburban San Francisco stations with the studios in Pleasanton. Good place to hang out. Certainly nice proximity to the Coliseum. Lots and lots of A's games. I went to a ton, as many as I could, actually. And I love those midweek businessman specials because remember, I'm doing the morning show. I'm off the air at 10. By the time I get done with production or whatever I've got to do, it's 11:30, maybe 12. Ballpark. Great games. A lot of sunburn. But anyway, I got married again in 2011. Third time, if you're keeping track. First time was a heartbeat. 2 kids and done. Second one was 20 years. And then the third one, which is the current one, thank you very much, still working on everything's fine, mostly. 2011 is when we got married. September 16th, notable because the place where we exchanged our vows, very familiar to A's fans, because it's home plate. That's right. We got married at the same place where I proposed to Nancy, which was on the scoreboard at the Coliseum during an A's game. Supposed to happen like in the 4th inning. For whatever reason, didn't happen until like the 8th inning. Try to keep your girlfriend from going to the bathroom for 4 innings. It's not easy. Ask Sergio. He'll tell you. Anyway, she said yes. Long story longer. We got married at home plate. Now, that's never happened before or since. We're the only couple ever to get married at home plate at an A's game. Now, other couples have gotten married at the Coliseum during an A's game, or before or after, I don't know. But the West Side Club is typically where they do that, not at home plate, because in the words of the A's, we'll never be doing that again. There's a lot of work. Anyway, we pulled it off. It was awesome. Still got video of that. It's very cool. Got married right there. And now, A's fans in our family, we've got 6 kids, right? So I got 4. Nancy had 2. So we combined Brady Bunch action. And they all, to some degree, are A's fans. I will tell you, there's a couple of Giants fans. But anyway, we don't talk about that. That was the year that Lou Wolf cashed in his 10% share of the team, 2016. This is after I'm talking about the kids growing up at the Coliseum, basically. John Fisher got full ownership of the A's in 2016, and he can certainly afford it. Last we checked, Forbes magazine says $2.9 billion net worth, and he owns 18% of Gap Incorporated along with his brothers. In the pandemic year of 2000, I got let go after 13 years of waking up the East Bay. COVID. And when that happened, we lost advertisers, and we didn't just lose them like here and there. We lost them. Boom. 65 advertisers in 10 days. Needless to say, that was the end of that gig. They had to do whatever they could do to keep the lights on. I get it. It's business. I totally understand it. So COVID-19 related budget cuts put me on the sidelines, out of work for the first time in 13 years. So we moved to Las Vegas, not because we wanted to follow the Raiders, or did they follow us? No, wasn't that at all. It was that Nancy, my wife's business, had re-domiciled from California and Washington to Nevada. So she was already going back and forth between the Bay Area and Vegas. So once I was out of work, it was like, well, other than the fact that the kids are here, 2 of them, we'll visit enough. Vegas makes sense, a little lower cost of living, and, you're already there working, so maybe I can get a job there. It's worked out real well. Anyway, since I wasn't on the air there anymore, we just say, hey, let's do it. So been in Vegas ever since. So as you have learned, we may be the same age. We are 62. But there is a world of difference in our stories. You see, between John Fisher and I, one of us has been an Oakland Athletics fan virtually all of the 56 years that the A's have been in Oakland. One of us considers this team and its long relationship with its very loyal fans in Oakland to be sacred, really, and firmly believes that the A's are more than just a baseball team. In fact, one of these people, one of us, looks at the A's as being a multi-generational heirloom that should be protected with every ounce of your being. One of us believes that. One of us deeply loves the Oakland Athletics. The other one owns the team. So there's your Dear John letter. I'll wrap it up here. Dear John, sell the team. Love, Wayne. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. It was kind of fun telling the stories. And you know more about me than you probably ever wanted to. But I do appreciate it. Thank you for hanging out. By the way, if you did enjoy the show, give us the thumbs up down below. That helps us spread the channel and the podcast. Certainly appreciate that. And hey, subscribe, because that way you'll be alerted the minute there's a new episode that you can consume. And share with your friends. Let's do that too, okay? Thanks for being here. I hope you'll be around next time. We'll do it again very soon. Until then, I'm Wayne Coy, and you keep on swinging.